Virginia, there may not be a Santa Claus, but there is a GalaxyCon, and guess who's coming?
It's going to be us, the Inglorious Treksperts in Richmond, Virginia.
Inglorious Live Tour 2023 continues.
Wow.
Darren and me, Mark A. Altman, will be in Richmond at GalaxyCon on, when is it, Darren?
It's March 24th through 26th.
March 24th to March 26th in lovely Richmond, Virginia. And there are going to be a ton of great guests. But none of that matters because we're there.
We're there. We are a ton of great guests.
We are indeed. And we're excited because GalaxyCon is where it's at. These guys put on great shows with great guests, a great dealer's room, and plenty of entertainment. And more. And more. That's exactly. The illusion of beauty and more. So I'm really excited, Darren. It's going to be a great chance to, I was going to say, a great chance for you to meet the fans.
That's right. And, for me to meet the fans, not you.
That's right. That's right. I'll be eluding deadly scooter accidents.
Oh my
but I'm excited because, like I said, the Inglorious Live Tour, or as I call it, my farewell tour. This is like the Who. You know, I'm on my farewell tour, but we know how that turned out. They've been on the same farewell tour now for 50 years.
That's right.
40 years.
That was a Godfather reference. Godfather 2, actually.
Yeah, he died of the same heart attack since. But it's gonna be great. Jodie Whittaker is gonna be there. Rosario Dawson, Kevin Smith, Bill Shatner, Brent Spiner. No, this is Columbus.
That's Columbus.
That's Columbus.
You got to click on the Richmond one.
I'm talking about Richmond, Virginia.
I don't think they have all of their guests up yet.
They don't. But Vincent D'Onofrio's going to be there. David Tennant's going to be there. Oh, one of our favorite people. You know who's going to be there? Not only is Bill Shatner going to be there, Walt Koenig's going to be there. We love Walt.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it'd be good to see him. Maybe we can.
Maybe we can show him another movie he hasn't seen in 30 years.
Jonathan Frakes will be there. Gates is going to be there, and
nice.
They're just starting to announce some of these guests. But the list goes on and on. And it's going to be Mariel Hemingway from my favorite movie, Manhattan.
Nice.
And maybe if we can moderate a panel with her. I guess she's there for Superman 4, but we can talk about personal best in Manhattan. I think they'll go over the heads of the audience. They'll be like, what's going on here? Sarah Douglas is going to be there. We haven't seen her since Lola's. Yeah. Superman. That'll be great. Mark Pillow, Nuclear Man, is going to be there.
Nice.
And of course, the great Barry Bostwick will be there, star of such great legendary movies as Megaforce. So it's going to be a ton of fun. We're going to be there. We hope you'll be there too. Check out GalaxyCon.com for all the details, and we'll see you in Richmond, Virginia this March. Hey, Darren, have you heard about Treksperts Plus yet?
Heard about it. We've done it. What
it's
are you
amazing.
About? Of course I've heard about it.
It's so cool. You're getting the whole Treksperts experience, but you're also getting a new podcast from us, the Inglorious Treksperts, Deck 78.
This is true. It's like hanging with us in the lounge on a starship.
But also cool guests talking about cool subjects. Trek adjacent topics like Alien, Battle Beyond the Stars, RoboCop, Logan's Run, The Black Hole, you name it.
And
we'll be there.
Who knows? There might be a little one about The Godfather someday.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Maybe
I want to do that.
Be able to refuse that.
They won't indeed. So it's really easy to join. If you want to support the podcast and become a member of Treksperts Plus to get all the great Treksperts Plus goodness, you want to go to trekspertsplus.com, trekspertsplus.com, and take off one for savings.
Out. Yeah.
Yeah. You can sign up. It's very easy. And then from there on out, you can enjoy the full experience and
you can be
find your way
chosen.
to Deck 78, the hidden deck of the Starship Enterprise and the Inglorious Treksperts, where we hang out.
Well, yeah, it's all good. Join us.
The trekspertsplus.com.
Sleigh bells ring. Are you listening? In the lane, snow is glistening. A beautiful sight. We're happy tonight. Walking in a winter wonderland. Gone away is the bluebird. Here to stay is a new bird. He sings a love song as we go along.
Hey, this is Mark A. Altman.
And this is Darren Doctorman.
And this is Ashley Edward Miller.
And we are the
Inglorious Treksperts.
And we're back. And we're back for our holiday special. And it wouldn't be a holiday cheerful special without none other than Robert Meyer Burnett. Welcome.
Well, the weather outside is frightful, but we don't care because we're in a starship traveling the cosmic infinitude.
There is no weather in space.
There are ion storms, Mark. There are ion storms.
There are ion storms. And then we end up in the mirror universe.
That's
we
right.
We are surfing the chronosynclastic infundibulum.
I just have to say that I have to point this out because this is the holiday special. And we're talking to our good friend, Rob Burnett, who, for all the world right now, looks like Kris Kringle in Miracle on 34th Street, the original Natalie Wood.
Ho, 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 Ashley, have you been a good boy?
He's like, he sort of has the short hair. He's kind of rocking it. He's sort of like the Studley Santa Claus.
What do I need to do? Sing in Dutch? What the hell?
And I'm Hanukkah Harry. But, it's funny.
A week.
You mentioned that whole ion storm thing. We should do a mirror countdown where our counterparts do the characters.
The joke is that this is the mirror countdown, and we only reveal it in the last episode.
That's right. That's why I have a goatee.
I can only imagine what our counterparts in that other universe would be doing right now. And it wouldn't be.
And the best character is Harry Kim. Wait, what?
Come on, 7 of 9. You want a place on the list? I'll play.
It's like that Community episode with the darkest timeline. That is truly the darkest timeline. Harry Kim is our number one pick. Actually, maybe it's not.
No. I can think of darker timelines.
Yes, Mr. Home.
Hey, he made our list. Don't knock Mr. Home. He was number 90 along with Loxana Troy.
Harry Kim.
The great Majel Barrett, who also starred in Westworld. That's correct. So before we continue our countdown at number 89, I just want to ask you, obviously the holidays are almost upon us, Christmas and Hanukkah and Kwanzaa and Festivus. What are some of the Star Trek or Star Trek adjacent presents that you most covet this holiday season, Rob?
I want the Exo 6 Star Trek the Motion Picture 6-scale action figures.
The Troika.
Well, I think it's going to take a while to get McCoy.
That's
but
too bad.
Spock and Kirk are eminent.
Yeah.
Don't know if they're
imminent, not eminent.
They're eminent and imminent.
They're anemone. They're sea anemones.
If a doll becomes preeminent, he's expected to have enthusiasms.
Enthusiasms.
Yes. So that's what I would like.
Yeah. Wow. I don't blame you. Those Spock and Captain Kirk from the motion picture do look pretty spectacular.
They look good.
Yeah. And did you get the Cisco?
He is not shipped yet to me, but I should have him this week.
Yeah.
He texts you and you shall have him.
I was on the fence. I'm really sticking with TOS only. So I did not get Cisco, but I'm having, shall we say, regrets.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of weird what they're doing. You know, Tuvok and Cisco came out. I mean, they're doing the Voyager crew, and I'm glad they're delving into
about not getting Tuvok though.
No, I know, but I'm getting them all.
Timeline.
The only ones I'm not getting are I didn't get Burnham or Saru.
Gotcha.
So, but they're just so nice.
Did you get the Guardian of Forever? It's in a top hat and tails.
No, that's not canon, Mark.
Yeah, I know. Okay,
that's from a comic book.
So, what about you, Ashley Miller? What would you like to have this holiday season?
My tastes are very simple. The one thing that I've asked for that I know that I want is the Star Trek the Motion Picture Director's Edition on 4K. That's what I want.
You don't have one?
I don't.
I'm just gonna say that.
I don't.
Where
have
you
one.
been, buddy?
I know. I know.
It's going to be sold out by the time the holidays come.
Well, that's why I put my wish list out a while ago. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Well, it's definitely something worth having. That's for sure.
Damn right.
What a beautiful set that is. Beautiful work by Darren and the team. Beautiful.
Yeah.
I've
only watched it on streaming.
Yeah. You're in for a treat.
It does look pretty good on HBO Max, though. I have to say.
Yeah.
Not comparing it to any previous streaming service. But
because all the Star Trek movies are currently streaming on HBO Max. You know, it's funny. So on Friday, I got the COVID booster, the Omicron booster, and a flu shot.
Omicron study too.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so nothing more exciting than a dream that failed. But I was laid up for the weekend because that's what happens when you get 9,000 shots in your arm and you're me. And so what did I do? I had the Pluto on, which, was exactly the kind of thing you do when you're sick and you can't really pay attention to something. And they were showing TOS. And I got to tell you, this is probably going to come as very little surprise to the three of you. That's a really good show. Because, the great thing about watching it on the Pluto is that you're not in control. It's like the Outer Limits. The TV takes control, right? And so you're just at the mercy of whatever they show. So I'm watching episodes I haven't watched in a long time, like Leary and Dagger of the Mind. And
you can't play the guess the episode within 5 seconds game if you've picked the episode to play.
Yes, that's true.
Right, exactly.
But you can.
Yeah.
You can with Pluto.
It's just no fun.
And it's funny. I want literally 1 second. I still got it when it comes to TOS. Yeah. Next gen, I had some problems. I had some problems.
Couldn't you identify inheritance immediately?
I could not. I still can't. I still don't know that it really is an episode or just an elaborate gag on me that this episode even exists. I was telling them the other day, Rob, that this episode came on Pluto, this thing called Inheritance from the 7th season of Next Gen. I literally did not remember. Like it comes on, I'm like, what episode is this? What is happening? Data has a mother. I've never seen. And of course I've seen every episode of Next Gen, but I'm like, it was like, where did this come from? Am I imagining this? Like it was. I remember literally nothing about the episode. If somebody had told me, I said, no, that doesn't exist. There's no such episode. I couldn't remember it at all. It was the most bizarre thing.
Well, that's odd because that episode's 7th season, which means it's from the 93-94 TNG season. And of course, I met you for the first time at Comic-Con in August of 94. So had I read the CFQ retrospective that you wrote with those reviews in it first? Had it come out before I'd met you or not? Do you remember?
Yeah, because you had seen Sci-Fi Universe number 2. Which had the episode guide to season 7, which presumably I reviewed Inheritance.
You had to have, yes.
and don't remember it at all.
Was that the one with Riker screaming, I can't believe it's over?
Yeah, that's the one with Riker screaming and it says, I can't believe it's over. That's still from Parallels, which I do remember.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
I can't believe I remember that.
I remember.
Yeah, so it was bizarre, but I'm really enjoying watching the Pluto.
Well,
as though it's actually television where you have zero control over what's on.
This is where you can enjoy your future years of memory loss and enjoy things anew.
Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of. But people say, "Oh, well, don't you have the episodes?" Of course, I have the episodes.
Yeah,
how many times I have I have them on digital. I have them on disc. I have them on any possible laser disc. I have them. But for whatever reason, I'm watching the Pluto. Same thing. Rob and I talk about this all the time. James Bond comes on TV, and you watch it with the commercials. Just even if you have it on Laserdisc and VHS and 9,000 Blu-rays and DVDds, for some reason,
it's an imagined community that you're part of.
It's an imagined community. Yes, indeed. That is very much true. And speaking of that, I don't know if you got this is a book I got myself an early Christmas present. It's the Quentin Tarantino. Cinema Speculation. Has anyone read this book yet?
I have it, but I haven't read it yet.
I listened to it on Audible.
What'd you think, Darren?
It's certainly verbose, and he has a lot of opinions on things. Some of them I agree with, some of them not so much. But it's good that he is so powerful in his opinions and likes and dislikes.
Boy, he loves that Pretty Maids All in a Row, doesn't he?
not as much as he should.
Well, he went off on how bad Point Blank is compared to the outfit. And I'm just like, what? Yeah. That's crazy talk. Yeah. It's just crazy talk. I don't know. It's just some very odd comments. I enjoyed the book. I think it's good. I don't think it's a staggering work of film criticism, but I think it's it certainly informs us on his tastes. Yeah. So
and they're consistent.
I'll say this for him: he's consistent. So, Darren, what about you? What's on your holiday list?
You know what? I've been a lucky kid since I was little, and I would always get wonderful things for Christmas. And that sort of tapered off in my 30s and 40s, and later when I became an adult. But I have to say,
when in your 50s, you became an adult when you're in your 50s.
I'll tell you when I became an adult.
Just
right
checking.
Now. Look, Christmas is
I'll tell you about my mother.
I'll tell you about my mother. Christmas is a lovely time to give, and it's become that for me because I'm really good to myself the rest of the year. And look, if I were still in my early years, I would have killed to have the Jazz Inc. Batmobile. And I got it for myself. I ordered it 3 years ago, and it came this past week. And my God.
Those atomic batteries didn't get to speed in time.
It is the most beautiful thing ever. And it's huge, and it fits the giant figures. And man, oh man, I would, if I were 10 years old, I would just shoot myself because there's nothing else left. It's all good.
Wow.
Nice.
I don't know if that's an endorsement or not.
It is. It is.
Okay.
Because it's just astonishing. And if I hadn't got it for myself, I would want it for Christmas. But I would have had to have waited another 3 years. So I'm good.
Nice.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, that's great. Well, I think it's going to be a very happy holiday season for all of us. And who knows, maybe we'll even be done with this list by then. Although I seriously doubt it.
I don't think we are. I don't think we will be.
This is the Inglorious Treksperts Top 101 Holiday Countdown. This year we're doing 101 greatest Star Trek characters of all time. Greatest Star Trek characters. When we finished part 1, at number 90 was Loaxana Troy and Mr. Home. And we continue the countdown with Ashley Miller at number 89.
Coming in at number 89 is a character who's even nearer and dearer in my heart than number 89. He is one of the few successful relative characters in Star Trek history. I'm speaking of Benjamin Sisko's father, Joseph Sisko, played by the great Brock Peters.
You know, there's something I just don't understand. You're always telling me that space is big, that it's an endless frontier filled with infinite wonders.
It's true.
Well, if that's the case, you would think it would be more than enough room to allow people to leave each other alone.
It just doesn't work that way. It should, but it doesn't.
Who you remember from Star Trek 4 and Star Trek 6 is Admiral Cartwright. And Joseph Sisko is he's a chef in New Orleans, in Louisiana. He makes a mean gumbo, and he has some of the best moments with Captain Sisko of any character on the show. And you can see where Sisko gets his cantankerousness, his cleverness, like so many things that get communicated by Brock Peters. And I think for me, it all comes down to one exchange from the Homefront Paradise Lost two-parter, where we discover that there are, 3 changelings on Earth, and that's it. And Sisko, Captain Sisko, has become convinced that his father maybe has been taken over by a changeling to get close to him. And his father gives him the kind of beatdown that every father should give a boy that he loves. And he says, "This business has got you so twisted around, you can't think straight. You're seeing shapeshifters everywhere. Maybe you ought to think about something for a minute. If I was a smart shapeshifter, a really good one, the first thing I would do would be to grab some poor soul off the street, absorb every ounce of his blood, and let it out on cue whenever someone like you tried to test me. Don't you see? There isn't a test that's been created a smart man can't find his way around. And that is everything you need to know about Papa Sisko.
Changelings.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. What a great character. But you're right. I mean, the trope of the relative we never met before is one of the Star Trek's worst tropes, whether it's in Operation Annihilate, where we, basically dispatch Captain Kirk's brother in seconds and don't really deal with the emotional repercussions of it, or Worf, as a son, he has a dad, a mom, his dad, Georgia Brown and Theodore Bickel, which is actually kind of fun. But then, everybody else, we got, the worst, Riker's dad, the great Mitchell
This fight
Ryan.
is all we have left.
So, yeah, but Joseph Sisko was a multi-dimensional, fully drawn, fascinating character played by the great Brock Peters, and a really nice addition to the oeuvre of amazing characters on Deep Space Nine.
And they would have deep voice fights.
Yeah, they would.
Oh, my God, what great voices they have.
Yeah.
So that brings us to Robert Meyer Burnett, number 88.
Now, I have to say that this character is one of my favorite, call him antagonists in Star Trek history. When I was a little kid, I was so intrigued by this character. I loved him so much. And what's very interesting about this character is what he sort of represents, which is all of human history in one man. And I'm, of course, referring to Flint.
If you do not leave voluntarily, I have the power to force you to leave or kill you where you stand.
Have you ever seen a victim of Virgilian fever? They die in one day. The effects are like bubonic plague.
The Enterprise, a plague ship.
The last tender encounter, Captain Kirk.
Be thankful that you did not attack me, Captain. I might have accepted battle, and I have twice your physical strength. How childish he is, Raina. Would you call him brave or a fool?
I will not be the cause of this. I choose.
My crew. Time for you to join your crew.
Played by the great James Daly.
Yeah.
In one of the toward the latter, the end of Star Trek, the original series in the third season, Requiem for Methuselah is where this character came from. And he was an immortal from Earth that caused, for whatever reason, instant tissue regeneration. And throughout his life, he was many different people. Mm-hmm. He knew Moses. He was the Jewish King Solomon at one point. He knew the philosopher Socrates. And he knew Jesus and under the name Lazarus. And
Bill and Ted could have saved a lot of time by just
he knew Jesus
him
biblically,
because he was at least 15 people.
Yeah, he was Johannes Brahms. He was Leonardo da Vinci. As a matter of fact, at one point Kirk promised never to reveal Flint to the rest of the universe, but in a Star Trek Voyager episode, Captain Janeway says, Captain Kirk claimed to know Da Vinci, which means Kirk told. Kirk didn't keep a secret.
I don't think that's true. I think that's a lie.
No, maybe. Yeah. But
the rats.
I loved this character, and I love the way he dressed. He's got an incredible outfit, and of course, he created this episode. The episode that it's from always bothered me as a kid, as much as I loved Flint. And by the way, there was a moment in this episode where he has so much power at his command, he shrinks the Enterprise down to the same size as an AMT model of the Enterprise and has it on his desktop. And they always They always cut that out of syndication. So when I was a kid, I remembered seeing that.
Yeah.
And then years later, I was like, I thought this was the episode where they shrink the Enterprise and Kirk looks into the view screen, and it was always gone. And it wasn't until I got the episodes on VHS where it was restored to its original glory. But for a kid, this character that he lived 6,000 years and he'd lived many different guises. Then he left the Earth and bought his own planet and wanted to just live alone and created Reyna, this android, of course, that Kirk falls in love with, which I never bought. You know, as a kid, I was like, come on, dude, you can't fall in love with a woman in an afternoon.
No, hell yeah. And then you became an adult, Rob, and you discovered that was 100% possible.
I did actually.
And Rob was correct. He was Flint.
But for all of this,
he was also Robert
for all of this, I love this episode. I loved his voice, James Daly's voice as Flint. He's one of just the most distinctive characters. And there was, even as a kid, I recognized there was something sad about this man who knew so much and had seen so many things, and yet he just wanted to live by himself in his big gigantic. He reminded me of kind of Charles. When I saw Citizen Kane for the first time, I'm like, this guy's like Charles Foster Kane.
Oh, come on. You know, I was with you until then.
I'm telling you, I
now
did.
You sound like Scott Mance.
No, and his Xanadu, and you know, I did. I've always loved it. And I'll tell you something. What's even cooler about this character is in non-canonical Star Trek works like the Reeve Stevens Federation. Even when DC or IDW did the Star Trek Star Trek did the Legion of Superheroes crossover, Flint was in that. And it turns out he was related to the DC character Vandal Savage. They were amazing. They were counterparts.
That's perfect.
Different. I know. And I mean, I love this character. And the Reeve Stevens gave him a first name, Micah Brack. Was his name.
Da Vinci has a first name. Well,
I love this character, and just he gave it. There was such gravitas in his performance.
Yeah,
loved him.
Well, you really believed that he had lived all these lives.
Yes, and you know that was what Star Trek, especially the original series, did so well. Is you know, everyone talks about how operatic and kind of over the top Star Trek, the original series, could be. But then you get a performance like James Daly's performance. It was not a somnambulistic like except from Cochrane's was in Metamorphosis.
Right.
But it was a great, like, as a kid, I like sat up and I knew I had to listen to this guy, you know, and Kirk took him on. And I mean, it was kind of weird that he loved his own.
You make such a great distinction there, Rob, because you know, we're not doing a list of best episodes. Like, I don't think Requiem for Methuselah would, or as your ex-girlfriends called it, Requiem for the Martians, would be on our top 101 list. It certainly wouldn't be on mine. But we're doing characters, not episodes. Yeah. And even though I'm not a fan of Requiem for Methuselah by any means, I definitely agree that Flint is a great character and a fascinating conceit, which you just articulated, and very much belongs on this list.
And what's really interesting is the first draft of this script was actually written by Jerome Bixby, who wrote Mirror, Mirror, among others. And Jerome Bixby went on and they adapted later his story, The Man from Earth, where these concepts were revisited. It's a lower budget science fiction movie. It's definitely worth seeing. So, you know, humanity, the immortal human, is something that's never gone away from our legends. And this was a really great iteration of that idea.
So how would he fare against Sean Connery is the question.
You know, there can be only one, Mark.
He was Sean Connery.
Only one.
He was Sean Connery.
He was.
Yeah, I mean, he was. He probably was.
The quickening.
I love this character too, and I love James Daly. Just a little bit of trivia: James Daly is the father of Tyne Daly, who was in Cagney and Lacey.
I did not know that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I will make it 4 for 4. I love Flint, and I actually am quite fond of this episode.
Yeah, I mean, half of it's really, really good. I mean, I love watching Spock discover all of these artifacts, and
I love how they're looking for Ritalin. But they mispronounce it as Ritalin.
Yeah,
I'm not a big fan of the little robot, the M4.
Why not? He's great.
Because M1 through M3 were not entirely successful. But yeah, good look. James Daly's great, and it's a great character. And speaking of great characters, Darren, tell us.
I just want to say that I love the fact that Spock recognizes Brahms' handwriting.
Oh, it's so great. That's so great.
Why wouldn't he? He's a musician. He probably memorized the script of many of the great composers.
Cool. I don't know. I've heard him play the Old Vulcan Heart. I think calling him a musician is charitable. Okay, number 87.
Number 87 is mine, and this character is interesting because it could be actually one of a few characters that have been mentioned throughout TOS, it could be misconstrued as the blonde lab technician that Gary Mitchell threw at Kirk before Where No Man Has Gone Before. But in her final version, she is Carol Marcus.
Project Genesis, a proposal to the Federation.
Carol Marcus. Yes.
What exactly is Genesis? Well, put simply, Genesis is life from lifelessness. It is a process whereby molecular structure is reorganized at the subatomic level into life-generating matter of equal mass. Stage 1 of our experiments was conducted in the laboratory. Stage 2 of the series will be attempted in a lifeless underground. Stage 3 will involve the process on a planetary scale. It is our intention to introduce the Genesis device into a pre-selected area of a lifeless space body, a moon or other dead form. The device is delivered, instantaneously causing what we call the Genesis effect. Matter is reorganized with life-generating results. Instead of a dead moon, a living, breathing planet capable of sustaining whatever life forms we see fit to deposit on it.
Fascinating.
The reformed moon simulated here represents the merest fraction of the Genesis potential, should the Federation wish to fund these experiments to their logical conclusion. When we consider the cosmic problems of population and food supply, the usefulness of this process becomes clear. This concludes our proposal. Thank you for your attention.
Dr. Carol Marcus, who led the team that created the Genesis device and let her son go crazy and do something horrible to make it work. But that's not the topic right now. The topic is that Carol Marcus was sort of the main woman in Kirk's past that he had a family with, that he agreed to step away from. And she still in their later years respected and loved Kirk, but she knew that they would not get along together in life. So she asked him to go his own way, and so he did.
Much like Fleetwood Mac.
Much like Fleetwood Mac. We obviously see their reconnection in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. And she's a good character. I'm not exactly sure I believe that character, though.
You know what? Here's what I think is pretty cool about Carol Marcus. So, and this is just me being meta as shit, but here you've got, this, she's very clearly, she's a very reasonable, rational scientist. But on the other hand, she has this appreciation for beauty, and she's a humanist. So who did Kirk fall in love with and have a baby? He fell in love and had a baby with McCoy. The Tuvix of McCoy and Spock.
Yeah.
Like if you just sort of like put him into a transporter and they
put a blonde wig on him.
Then put a blonde wig on him. They came out. That's what I like about her.
That's an interesting point. And it's perfectly reasonable to give those characteristics to her, because obviously that is what Kirk would be attracted to and honor and respect. And I think it's a nice sort of aspect to bring her out and have her be the woman from his past. I don't necessarily agree with her motivations, but, super modern women have their own way. I really like Baby Besh. She did a lovely portrayal of the character, and she was just sort of rock solid. And
Rob, remember when Samantha Mathis came in to read for Claire? And she said, my mother was in Star Trek. And we're like, yeah, we know.
No, she loved that
Your mother was Malachi Throne?
It was always nice when people would come in and not realize that we really were Star Trek fans. They thought we just had written this script. They didn't quite know the depths, and Shatner was one of them.
Depths of our depravity.
The depths of our depravity.
They didn't know that you didn't just talk the talk.
Yes. No, we didn't. We're still talking the talk, Darren, and it's 25 years since we made that movie.
In fact, it's been 25 years since we started this podcast.
Yes.
But I really like Carol Marcus. The fan film episode that I directed dealt with their first meeting, and I thought it was an interesting take on it. I wish they had carried her through more movies, but she sort of just disappeared, and that's a shame.
Yeah, kind of got replaced in Star Trek 4. I thought that was kind of. I mean, I understand why they did it, but
Yeah, we talked a little bit about this when Gab was on the show, and this was a Harv Bennett thing, and I think a lot of us feel it was a mistake. Ashley articulated how he would have brought Carol Marcus back in Star Trek Beyond, and this is really interesting. Really interesting. So if you're curious about that, you want to go back and listen to the episode where we have Gab Stanton on the show. So that brings us to number 86. Number 86 on our list is Jason Nesmith from Galaxy Quest. No, it's not Jason Nesmith. He's not a Star Trek character. None of this, Galaxy Quest is the best Star Trek movie nonsense. We all love Galaxy Quest, but,
But shut up.
Exactly. No, in fact, it's the curmudgeonly groundskeeper of Starfleet Academy who offers little wise pearls of wisdom to people as they spend their 4 years at the Academy. And of course, he's also my favorite Martian, Ray Walston, as Boothby, the groundskeeper.
Boothby. Mm-hmm. Jean-Luc Picard, class of 27.
I know that. What happened to your hair?
How are you?
I'm pretty damn cranky, thank you. I've already replanted this bed 4 times this week.
Let me give you a hand.
You?
I've acquired an interest over the years.
Well, don't plant them too deep. The stems will
rot.
They had to find someone more grizzled than Sir Patrick.
And what's really interesting, is Ray Walston played this character to a T. And when you think about it, he didn't really have that much screen time, and yet he's a remarkably memorable character. And the fact that he, schooled Will Wheaton's Crusher for being a disingenuous loser was an extra bonus for Boothby.
Well, part of the reason that the character is so memorable is that sort of old Orson Welles thing talking about the third man, is that everyone's talking about Boothby before we meet him.
Yes.
So it's a big setup for us to have the final reveal, and I think it's great.
Yeah, and great casting.
Absolutely.
And we hadn't seen a lot of Ray Walston on screen in a while, and he just nails it. It's a shame that we'll never get another performance of Ray Walston as
That's true. I was so lucky I got to meet Ray Walston on the remake, My Favorite Martian movie, and he was the sweetest guy ever. So
that's so cool.
And I didn't call him Boothby.
That's probably for the best.
Boothby.
So number 85, Robert Meyer Burnett. Here's the surprise.
This I have to say that this is a character that one of the time-worn Star Trek tropes, all the way back to the first season of the original series, is a transporter malfunction of some kind. And I think one of the best and most memorable is, of course, The Enemy Within, which splits Kirk into two. Now we're going to jump ahead to Star Trek Voyager. Of all the moral and ethical dilemmas that I've heard fans talk about from Star Trek over the years, this episode and this character is surprisingly the one I've talked to more people about than any other moral or ethical dilemma in Star Trek. Mm-hmm. And I'm referring to the titular character, Tuvix.
Security to the bridge.
Commander, you gotta stand by and do nothing while she commits murder. Each of you is going to have to live with this. My colleagues. My friends.
Energizing.
They're forming.
Tuvix. Tuvix is, of course, a combination of Tuvok, Neelix, and an orchid. Believe it or not. I know, it's Voyager. It's crazy. So, of course, he is, according to Memory Alpha, he's 1/3 Vulcan, 1/24 Talaxian, 1/24 Mylian, and 1/3 symbiogenic orchid. And so, of course, Tuvix is a combination of Neelix and Tuvok have been fused together. And the idea is, should he be allowed to live? Or should they figure out a way to unfuse him and try and get their crew members back? And I have to say, that is obviously my first response would be, well, of course you have to figure out a way to reverse this. But this is a new being that, rightly or wrongly, is very intelligent, has the qualities of both Tuvok and Neelix put together. And should they even do this? Does Tuvix have a right to exist? And it's a fascinating episode. The actor, there's an actor named Tom Wright who played Tuvix. I really enjoyed his performance. And I find that this episode, while it is so obviously built on a ridiculous, very implausible gimmick, it still, at its core, has a really interesting ethical dilemma. And I have to say, I've always wondered how interesting it would be. You could never have done this because you're taking two principal cast members off the board. But wouldn't it have been interesting if Tuvix was allowed to remain throughout the entire season?
Yeah. Well, it's the whole Tom Riker thing.
Yes.
Wouldn't it have been interesting if Willa died and you had Tom Riker now?
Yes, and
of course, that would have been the same actor, but
right. But this, and then at the end, maybe of the season, and this dilemma would have played out through the season. I mean, it didn't happen that way, but it's a fascinating episode. And I found that when you get together with anybody and talk about this, people have very different takes on it. I mean, the obvious answer is to say, well, we want a cast back, of course. But
not necessarily.
Well, yeah, I mean, but
I was just thinking that.
Well, you are bad people.
Uh-huh.
But it is a pretty fascinating episode, and the fact that it can spur this kind of conversation on is interesting.
It's great. I mean, it's all about big ideas. That's what Star Trek is
big
about.
Ideas,
and if fueling discussion about important questions is imperative.
And absolutely, and it's really, really interesting. And it's I love this line. So at what point did he become an individual and not a transporter accident? And this is what Star Trek does great. It can take an outlandish, but here's the funny thing. When Star Trek did something outlandish, it made it seem at its best plausible. And then if it was so outlandish that it might not have been plausible, then it turned this thing into an ethical dilemma that becomes the focus of the episode. And you get one ask, and your ask, Star Trek, is the accident itself, the ridiculousness that it was caused by the enzymes of this orchid during transport, which makes really pretty much no sense at all, but you go with it. that's a big ask, but it doesn't matter because the ethical considerations are so interesting that you go with it.
I like big asks, and I cannot lie.
Everybody's got a big ask, Rob.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your.
I've always been a big ask man myself.
Totally. I mean, I think the idea behind this is really interesting. I think that the question that gets posed is really interesting. I think as a story, it's a little bit schmuck bait for me because at the end of the day, you know how this is going to work out. And, I'm not sure that as drama, it 100% conveyed as the most interesting exploration of that ethical dilemma. And, but it is memorable. I mean, you think about it. Jesus, I just referenced it.
I know.
2 people ago, so there's that. It sticks. It definitely sticks.
But it's also a good warning to cast members not to get out of line because they can be written out at any moment.
Yeah, it's really interesting because it's nearly impossible to make a show consistently good that's 26 episodes a year. It's gotten a lot easier with 8 and 10 episode orders. And I think, it's no secret. I think that Voyager had more misses than hits, but when it did hit, it definitely worked. Episodes like Living Witness and Caretaker and, Year of Hell. And I think Tuvix is a good example of where it worked. And it asks a very interesting question. There's a great performance. It's a very Star Trekian conceit. And so I'm a fan. I think it's a really compelling character. In fact, you could argue that this character had more character development than either Tuvok or Neelix.
Yes.
In one episode. So that was really impressive as well. It was funny when Ed and I first sold our book, The 50-Year Mission. Our editor said, "Oh, I'm a big Star Trek fan, And I said, "Oh, well, we're going to get along great." And he said, "Yeah, my favorite episode of Star Trek is Tuvix." And I said, "Well, I'm not so sure we're going to get along great." But
we might get along.
Yeah.
Not great.
And he said, "Well, you don't like Tuvix?" I said, "No, I like it."
But I love when Tuvix says, each of you is going to have to live with this. And I'm sorry for that. For you are all good people. My colleagues, my friends, I forgive you.
Yeah, and that's Star Trek in a nutshell. It's great stuff.
It's great stuff.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they didn't get to do the sequel episode, which was Neelok.
Threevix.
Where it happens again. And yet another character is generated from their combination.
Number of the counting shall be Tuvix. 4 is right out.
And so that's Tuvix at number 85, which brings us to 84. Actually, Edward Miller, tell us who or what is number 84?
We just keep pulling these cards that are just near and dear to my heart. Another wildly successful relative and another Sisko. Benjamin Sisko's son, Jake.
Jake, you could still have so many years left.
No, we have to be together when I die.
Jake, you didn't have to do this. Not for me.
For you and for the boy that I was. He needs you more than you know. Don't you see? We're going to get a second chance.
Jake, my sweet boy.
How'd you know that was coming?
I guess we were just lucky this time.
You okay, Dad?
I am now, Jake. I am now.
played actually by two actors, Cyril Clofton and the great Tony Todd, my friend, who was one of the voices on my show, Dota Dragon's Blood on Netflix, 3 seasons. You can catch it now. Look, the great thing about Jake Sisko is that everything that was wrong with Wesley Crusher, that Wesley was a Mary Sue, that Wesley knew everything, that Wesley was the very special boy, all of that stuff was thrown out the window when Jake Sisko was created. Jake Sisko is a real kid. He's a real 15-year-old who's experienced a real loss. He lost his mother. He has a real relationship with his father, who has a very difficult job. Captain Sisko very clearly loves his son, and would move universes for him, and vice versa. They sometimes come into conflict.
You could say he'll travel oceans of time.
Oceans of time. Jake, will act like a real teenager. He'll get in trouble. He will lie. He will dissemble. He has really good reasons for it. But the great thing about it is that he never does dumb kid shit that creates unnecessary problems to kick episodes in the butt. Instead, Jake is treated like a real character. He's not a member of the crew, but he is a solid, episode or B story protagonist in his own right. He comes into his own and is, I think, in many ways most effective in one of my very favorite episodes of all time. We've talked about this in some of the top episode holiday specials, but DS9's The Visitor, which is just a heartbreaking, just incredible emotional exploration of the lengths that people will go to when they love each other, when they're afraid of loss. And he's just a great character. He is incredibly well performed by two different actors. He brings out a side of Captain Sisko that we never see in any other captain. And it's wonderful. It's a terrific addition to Star Trek. And, I can't say enough great things about him.
You know what's great? I mean, people forget the trope of the sci-fi kid was a disaster up until this point. You had Boxy in Battlestar Galactica, Gary Coleman and Buck Rogers, Dr. Z and
Happy birthday,
and Wesley, in next the genius kid who becomes, a valued crew member because he's smarter than Data, and finally with Jake, you have like a real teenager. He gets into trouble. He's smart, but he's not too smart. He has friends. He does dumb stuff, but not stupid stuff. He does dumb teenage stuff, not dumb show stuff.
Right.
He doesn't run on the lawn and step on the grass. It's like, and it's just such a great character. And Sirach is terrific in the role, and he really grew up in the role. And his friendship with Nog is something special. His friendship with obviously with Avery as Sisko, and for us, it's hard to even grasp. Especially in the early 90s, what it was like to see an African-American father and son depicted on television. They're not, it's not The Wire, it's this loving family who've lost their, mother / wife. And it's just fantastic. And he's great. The show is great. And it's a wonderful character who's served well by the writing.
I totally agree. I mean, honestly, and watching him mature to becoming himself a writer, and the way they used him during the Dominion War and
as a war correspondent,
it was really, really, really well done. And it's really one of my favorite episodes is the second season closer, the Jem'Hadar, where Jake and Sisko are going to go on a little planet a jaunt, and they have to take Nog, and they have to take Quark, and it's even Jake's like, Dad, I know, I didn't want to bring Nog, so he's self-aware of, he's very aware of who and what Nog is, but he's friends with him anyway.
Yeah,
and
he makes Nog a better Ferengi.
Yeah, it makes Nog a better Ferengi. And I love the episode where they're trying to get the baseball card. And it's just,
it's like MASH or something. It's great.
Yeah, it really is. And the way he grew up and the gravitas he had as a character throughout the series was terrific.
Well, and what's nice is that whole arc where, Sisko has left the station. He's been forced away from the station. And so he's part of the Federation fleet that's trying to retake DS9 and Federation territory. And Jake is, stuck covering the war on the space station.
Yeah.
And, how, Sisko's so worried about him and, how Ducat kind of like has a sort of respect for him without, it's interesting.
Yeah.
It's an interesting dynamic.
And as we were talking about the other day, I think the dynamic of the father and son helped the writers figure out what character that Captain Sisko was, Commander Sisko. Because it was only through that they were able to sort of delineate his character enough so that the actor would be interested in doing the show. And it's, I think it helped immensely, the dynamic of all the characters on there because they sort of got in a role with that, relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. So at 83, Brock Peters returns to the countdown in an entirely different role, playing Admiral Cartwright.
Notify all stations. Starfleet emergency, red alert. Switch power immediately to planetary reserves. Switch it now, Admiral. We are now on red alert. Attention, red alert. Mr. President, even with planetary reserves, we cannot survive without the sun.
I'm well aware of that, Admiral.
And Admiral Cartwright was a fascinating character in Star Trek 4.
Not really.
In Star Trek 4, he's part of high-ranking Starfleet. He's not Commodore, but he's like a high-ranking chief of I don't know what he is, but
he's the chief of Starfleet operations. He's basically like the CNO.
Starfleet operations. There you go. Yeah. And he, was trying to protect Earth and desperate for to save the Earth. From
basically yelling at
marauding
people for a half hour.
Yeah, but it's Brock Peters, so it's okay.
It's great sounding yelling.
And one of arguably the interesting twists of Nick Meyer brings it back in Star Trek 6, and we learn, spoiler alert, he's part of the conspiracy to undermine the peace between the Klingons and the Federation. And it's like, oh no, not Brock Peters. And, I wonder if that kind of came as a result of the fact that originally Nick wanted it to be Saavik, and then when he couldn't get Kirsty and change it to Valeris, it wouldn't have the impact. So he's like, okay, well, let's take another character that you like, theoretically, Brock Peters, Admiral Cartwright, and make him a traitor. It's not like, Colonel South.
Because I remember
West
all those
whatever.
Kids bought up all the Admiral Cartwright figures.
Oh,
I did.
Come on now. Look, and he brings gravitas. It's Brock Peters. He brings gravitas to the role.
It's fine.
And he does as much with his screen time, as he can. And, like you said on the last show, it's he played Darth Vader on the Star Wars radio show. And he brings a lot of, gravitas to the role. And it's an interesting evolution of that character, unless you're Darren.
Yeah, he has real presence and charisma. And the thing that I think works about him in 6 is that you already believe him as a Starfleet admiral. And you have to remember that by Star Trek 6, we have gotten into a place in Star Trek where if an admiral shows up, he is fucking crazy or evil. Right? So it's like, oh no, this one's fine. This one's fine. Nope.
One of the good ones.
Yeah. I always thought it was a missed opportunity that they didn't have a secondary cast of Starfleet officers that maintained continuity through the original series movies. Yeah. And I really enjoyed it. It kind of became, you had Brock Peters, you had Sarek was, of course, in Star Trek 3, 4, and 6. And it was great to have that. I felt like, we went into the Federation president's office in Star Trek 6 and you saw these familiar guys that they could have done more of that. It was by the time Star Trek 6 rolled around, I'd been reading Tom Clancy. I'd read Red Storm Rising and I'd read Hunt for Red October. And I'm like, this could have been a real Tom Clancy-esque espionage.
It would have been great for a Captain Styles callback.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. I mean,
I actually think it would have been great to have Brock Peters instead of Harv Bennett on the screen in Star Trek V.
That's correct.
That would have been great. And in fact, if somebody were to redo Star Trek V, if somebody were going to do a director's edition or a producer's edition or just a special edition, or maybe they could get Kurtwood Smith in makeup as an Alfrasian to do that call.
Afrosian.
Whatever.
Alfrasian was like, he was a producer on The Godfather, I think.
That's the alfresco version.
To do a communication with Kirk and just get rid of the whole Harv Bennett thing completely.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, because he's not an actor. I love Harv, but he's not an actor, and he had that's not a cameo role. Hitchcock would get on a bus. Yeah. He would stand in a window.
I want you to go to Nimbus 3.
And it was just like Harv never acted. It wasn't like he started in the actor's studio and then became a writer-producer. No, he was never an actor. You don't take that kind of role.
It was kissing up. It was kissing up to the producer. You know it.
Yeah.
So much kissing. So much kissing.
A lot of KB fiction.
Kissing.
KB toys. Okay. What? Okay. That brings us to number 82 and the great Darren Doctorman.
Number 82 is one of my favorites because it allowed the torrent of fan letters for Mr. Spock to overwhelm the production office and piss Shatner off.
And you're happy about that?
Because it's a great in-depth story about the making of this show. The episode I'm talking about is, of course, This Side of Paradise, written by D.C. Fontana, adapting another story to make it about Spock and giving Spock a love story with his long-lost love, Layla Kalomi, played by the amazing Jill Ireland.
You're no longer with us, are you? I felt something was wrong.
It was necessary.
Come back to the planet with me. You can belong again. Oh, come back with me, please.
I can't.
I love you. I said that 6 years ago, and I can't seem to stop repeating myself. On Earth, you couldn't give anything of yourself. You couldn't even put your arms around me. We couldn't have anything together there. We couldn't have anything together anyplace else. But we're happy here. I can't lose you now, Mr. Spock. I can't.
Charlie Bronson would agree with you.
Exactly. This is obviously that famous story that you guys tell making Free Enterprise, where you're talking with Bill about the script, and you can say, and Bill said, you said, Spock was on this planet with Jill Ireland, and Shatner stopped you, and he said, maybe she died young. Maybe we should use the character name from that. Maybe you can go to one of those books and look it up. And you immediately drop the stone on his foot and say, "Oh, you mean Layla Kalomi?" And then he looked at you.
That's a true story, and we ain't no band leaders.
That's a true story. But you know what? I think I've been thinking about this, and I think if Strange New Worlds knew what they were doing, they would have brought her out of mothballs rather than to Pring.
Mm-hmm.
And told that story, because obviously they want to make Spock the sex object and the hottie of the week. And that's a perfect way to do it. And not have to bring in this baggage from, already established TOS, where, now Spock looking at young T'Pring in his quarters on a photograph is creepy.
Yeah, it violates canon what they've done, and you just look. that would have required them to watch This Side of Paradise in their rewatch of 10 episodes before they decide to write Strange New Worlds, and that never shows up on anyone's list.
Anyway, but the deft handling of
if there are self-made purgatories, we all have to live in them.
Oh, so good.
It's so good. You know, he tells her that she couldn't pronounce his first name, and it's such a beautiful story and a great character because she was a botanist, she was a scientist, and you could see that she was the kind of woman that Spock would be attracted to because she's not only smart, but she's very loving. And let's say maybe he is reminded of his mother. I don't know. But
you know what, though? I have to say that I've said this before. I'll say it again. The women of Star Trek obviously shaped my preferences when I was a child as an adult.
Yeah.
And that character of Leela Colomi, Star Trek is accused nowadays of being sort of this misogynist throwback. But when you see characters like Leela Colomi, she is such a fully realized woman, such a soulful character where we, the audience, absolutely recognize why Spock would be in love with her if he was able to
who didn't fall in love with her in that episode?
Yeah, everybody did. Everybody did. And she is so vulnerable and strong at the same time. Mm-hmm. My God, what a terrific depiction. And this was not what you would normally see on, and this is a first season Star Trek episode. It goes along with Edith Keeler. We met people like Edith Keeler later in the season.
Yeah, all of Kirk's exes are strong, smart women.
But also, I mean, with Leela Colomi being Spock, the depiction of women on, especially the first season of Star Trek, was atypical for TV at the time.
You know what else I noticed? Sorry, watching Pluto this week, where I was watching all the episodes in order, was this actually points us is how good the show looked first season when they had more time. I mean, the direction and the cinematography is extraordinary. Like Miri is an episode I don't particularly like, but oh my God, does it look good? Is it well directed?
Well directed. By the way, is Pluto a real network?
It's only a dwarf network.
It's only a dwarf network. Yeah.
I had to ask.
Beware the dwarf streamer. And I mean, I don't watch anything with commercials. I mean, I pay for Peacock without ad free. So what the hell do I know?
But I was talking with someone online today in a couple messages, and I realized that, you know what? I don't mind the commercial breaks because that's how we were introduced to it.
I mind because I want to get back to the show. I want to get back. Plus, they keep showing the same commercials over and over.
Yeah.
Now, do they show the commercial breaks but have the complete episode? They don't have stuff cut out.
They have the complete episodes. Yeah, because they have a lower commercial load than broadcast TV. And I mean, because there are only so many commercials you can show for Rick Caruso during a commercial break. So it's very interesting because it's some real ridiculous commercials that they show. But and there are a lot of Paramount Plus commercials, so clearly they're not selling everything. But it's fun because you're watching them in order, and you're watching them like you used to watch them as a kid, and the streaming quality is pretty good, and unfortunately it's the new effects rather than the original effects,
it is which
really don't hold up, but that's a whole nother conversation. And of course people we love did them, so I really don't want to get into that. I mean, they worked with the best tools. I mean, they did the best they could.
They were in an insurmountable situation.
Yeah, they were not. Yeah, exactly. And
the odds were against them, and the situation was grim.
Yeah. But it's so much fun to sit there and just watch episode after episode after episode. But it's really clear watching the first season how good the show is. I mean, how good looking the show is.
Yeah.
Yep.
And to watch some of these episodes that we wouldn't necessarily. Hold on, my daughter is getting tickets for Taylor Swift. She has a pre-sale quote. I have to deal with this. Keep talking. Keep talking.
Well, I was going to say another great thing. I mean, we're spending a lot of time in this particular episode, but the first season had a lot of times when they went on location.
Yeah.
And even though, I mean, this was it's a colony, it's a colony world. So it could look like prefab. It could look like very simple buildings. So it never bothered me, even as a kid, that clearly they're shooting on some very terrestrial 20th century Western set because they were wearing these overalls that were these uniform. These overalls were all uniform, but they didn't look like just, Okie dot, whatever those things were called that everybody wore as a kid.
Oshkosh bagosh?
Oshkosh, yeah. Oshkosh. They didn't look like that. And that gave it that futuristic
Well, they
feel.
looked like the jumpsuits that Roger Corby was wearing.
Well, they certainly looked like that. But I felt like those were Federation issue,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
They when you were out
overalls.
Yeah, that's right.
They're the perfect wear for hanging in trees and yelling and laughing.
And getting replaced by an android.
I'm back. Sorry.
Welcome back.
Seamless
transition.
The pre-sales for Taylor Swift, and this is the one thing that my daughter really wants for Hanukkah. So I had to get on it immediately.
Oh, you and your parenthood.
So anyway, okay.
Well, good.
So that was Leela Kalomi. This brings us to Ashley Edward Miller, number 81, and we're back in Deep Space Nine land.
And speaking of crazy admirals, actually. Number 81 is an admiral. It is true, but he is not crazy. And, he does things that are questionable. He, at least from his point of view, may not be wrong. Admiral
That's
Leighton.
how Admiral Cartwright felt.
Yeah, exactly. Admiral Leighton, played by the great Robert Foxworth, is the former commanding officer of Benjamin Sisko, the man who gave him the recommendation to take command of Deep Space Nine.
The president will have all the evidence he needs to stop you. It's over.
It's not over!
I have enough loyal officers to make a fight of it.
Who will you fight? Starfleet? The Federation? Don't you see, Admiral? You're fighting the wrong war. And as for your loyal officers, Bentine's already abandoned you, and she was closer to you than anyone. You've lost. Don't make anyone else pay for your mistakes.
Admiral Leighton comes to believe that Starfleet Command and the Federation have been overtaken by changelings. And he sets out to resolve that by launching a coup against the Federation government. And he sets into motion a series of events designed to support his efforts to make that happen. And of course, he ends up coming into conflict with Captain Sisko in the course of all this. But what's great about Leighton is, number one, he does feel like a real military man, and not like in a caricature way. He feels like naval officers that I have met. He is decent. He is smart. He is dedicated to a particular ideal. And what is truly terrific about Deep Space Nine is that I think it is, look, we can sit back and we can judge Leighton as the antagonist of these episodes, as the force of opposition, however you want to say it. But we saw later Benjamin Sisko make choices that were equally as difficult and potentially as horrifying as the choices that Leighton made. The difference being that Leighton's paranoia was overstated. In the end, it is a bittersweet victory. And I think that is a testament to kind of how well drawn that character is, to how well drawn the conflict is. We mentioned this before, talking about, Joseph Sisko, referring to the number of, referring to how you would disguise a changeling, or the number of changelings on Earth, and the revelation that the changelings managed to manipulate Leighton and manipulate all of these things into happening, to have the Federation fall in against itself by placing only 3 changelings on Earth. And it's a terrifying moment. It's a great moment for Star Trek. But again, like, this is just a great character. I believe him. I believe that he had a career and a life before he walked into this episode. And that to me is the mark of a great Starfleet guest star, particularly one who is going to play the role of the antagonist Starfleet officer.
I totally agree with you. And like you said, he felt believable. You know, I mentioned earlier that during the time, one of the things that was going on that I really liked was there was sort of like Paramount was putting out the Tom Clancy movies, you know, Hunt for October, Patriot Games, and they did a lot of military thriller type movies that I always enjoyed. And Homefront and Paradise Lost, that two-part of it introduced this character, felt like that. It felt like it was inspired by the great 7 Days in May, you know, the military, the Frankenheimer from the 60s. It felt like a great military thriller. There was even our beloved Wise Guy series.
Yeah, the DC arc.
The DC arc, you know, day one,
Did
day
you get
three.
the Blu-ray?
Oh, yes, I did.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I did. It's right here. It felt like that. And I really liked the fact that Foxworth's performance was so great. If they hadn't, it could have gone the other way. But they did a very good job in Deep Space Nine, especially in the latter seasons, of casting these military guys. And I really loved that.
Yeah, you know, it's funny because a lot of people, including me, probably bemoan the fact that there was never a sequel to Conspiracy. You know, that wonderful first season episode with the parasites. But Homefront is a spiritual successor to Conspiracy.
Yeah. Yes, for sure.
It's very much, you know, the whole thing of the changelings are, you know, taking over Earth, and then it could be anyone or anywhere. And just what a great Robert Foxworth, who, of course, was so wonderful in Quester tapes for Gene, is just wonderful in this role. And it's so great to see him in this in Star Trek, and he was terrific. And I only wish we could have seen more of him.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which brings us to back to Robert Meyer Burnett and number 80.
Well, you know, one of the things that obviously Star Trek brought the world were Vulcans.
It brought the world order.
And I think obviously one of the great things about the original series is, almost without exception, the main Vulcan characters were always exceptional, and the performances were terrific. Celia Lofsky is T'Pau, and of course Mark Leonard, the great Mark Leonard, is Sarek. Even Arlene Martel playing T'Pring, and even the actor they found to play Stawn, who we saw in Balance of Terror.
Montague, Leonard.
Yeah.
Lawrence Montague.
Lawrence Montague. He looked kind of like Mark Leonard in a way, and there was yet after that, the people that they would cast as Vulcans were not. It was always very hit and miss for me. Although I think that Star Trek in the latter seasons added two Vulcan main characters that I really enjoyed as Vulcans. One was Tim Russ, you know, as Tuvok in Voyager. I really loved how he played a Vulcan. His intonations and his speech patterns, and he really made it his own.
He was the first actor. He was the first actor to get it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he loved Star Trek.
Yeah.
So he got it. He knew what it was. You weren't playing an emotionless character.
And that's the thing. I mean, the what people have never understood, and I hate this, is this idea that Vulcans don't have emotions, which is completely untrue. If you pay attention to Star Trek, they explain that, you know, even in Star Trek The Motion Picture, which, by the way, also had great Vulcans. We cast our animal passions out on these sands. I mean, they're still there. They've just learned control through the application of Surak's teachings.
And he got the same shit that Toussaint got on House of the Dragon. They're like, oh, there are no black Vulcans. It's like, why not?
Apparently there are.
Yeah, I mean, that's ridiculous.
I mean, if you really think about it, pigmentation is caused by environmental conditions, and theoretically, all Vulcans might be black. Really,
it's such an absurd thing that people get upset over this stuff.
Yeah, but he was terrific. I loved it. But so when I heard about the cast of Enterprise and saw who they'd cast, and they were going to bring on board a Vulcan, And this Vulcan was admittedly smoking hot. And I was like,
hot as Vulcan. Now I know what that phrase means.
Hot as Vulcan. Oh, wow. And I was dubious. And I have to say, I also think Jolene Blalock turned out to be one of the great Vulcan characters.
Totally.
In Star Trek.
Something tells me you're not here to talk about movie night.
I'm going through something that's very complicated.
I know.
I'm learning, it seems, for the first time, what it truly means to be Vulcan.
And maybe you can fill me in.
Not until I understand it myself. I don't think there'll be time for...
What do you want me to say?
That you understand.
I do. It's not like I didn't know this was coming.
She was, from the beginning, obviously, the way they played the distrust between the Vulcans and the humans and how the Vulcans were suppressing the human advancement into space via warp travel and all of that. And the way they cast her in this sort of adversarial role, I thought she played this role from the get. She was great. And yes, she was beautiful, but her performance punched way past that overt physical beauty that she carried with her. And she really, because she liked Star Trek too. She was a fan of this kind of thing, and she really understood how to play. I mean, I like Robin Curtis, but her performance in Star Trek 3, she's not a great Vulcan or Vulcan Romulan. I know she's a fan of the show and everything, and I really like her because I liked her playing another Vulcan, a full Vulcan in Gambit.
Yeah,
she's really good in Gambit,
and she's really good in Gambit. Like, she's really terrific. She learned.
Because she was properly directed in Gambit.
Probably, yes. But I think Jolene Blalock is one of the great Vulcans in Star Trek, and her arc and her affection and relationship with Trip Tucker, I thought was terrific. And the way she would play certain things, like when she was in The Expanse and was addicted to that mineral and had to get off of it. She had got to do a lot of really interesting things in the show. And I think she was definitely one of the high points of Enterprise. And I have nothing but great things to say about her as a Vulcan.
She knows how to handle decontamination, Joe.
Oh, she certainly does. She certainly does. But she was a great addition to that cast.
She's another one of these actors who grew into the role, much like Terry did. You know, just got better and better as she went along. And, obviously she was dealing with a lot at the time. And, but she's very good in the show. She also was a fan of the original, and she was frustrated with some of the scripts and some of the material she was given. But, I think she does a great job as a Vulcan. And, in fact, I came very close to using her in something. And unfortunately, because of the pandemic, it didn't happen. But I think Jolene's terrific, and I'd love to see, her in more things, but I think she's married to some billionaire now. So I don't know, how interested
What's
she
her
is
motivation?
in acting. So, but she's terrific. And if there ever is some kind of resurrection of Enterprise, I certainly hope that she would be a part of it.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So that brings us number 79. And people who knew Ira Graves was to know him, was to love him, was to know him. And it's really one of the great scenes in a not so great episode. The episode, of course, is Schizoid Man, and it marked the first appearance of Susie Plaxton as the Lieutenant Selar from, right?
Yeah.
Go on, gorgeous. Spit it out. Whatever the hell it is, I can take it.
I've checked twice to make certain. You have Darnay's disease. I'm sorry, Dr. Graves. It's in its final stage.
Can't you do something for him?
In all cases, Darnay's is terminal.
And also another solid performance as a Vulcan. And I think the reason she makes her list is because there's so many bad Vulcan performances in Star Trek post-TOS. As much as we love Next Gen, as much as we love Deep Space Nine, it was very rare to find an actor who either got it or was directed correctly.
Or the combination of actor and director.
Certainly, we mentioned Tim Russ was great in Voyager. Obviously, Jolene was wonderful in Enterprise. And another actor who got it was Susie Plaxton as Lieutenant Salar in The Schizoid Man, who also gets to act alongside the great, and I don't think he made our list, the great Morgan Shepherd, which a terrific actor who not only played Ira Graves, but went on to play the Commandant of Rura Penthe. And I recently, finally, after 30 years, finally watched The Keep, Michael Mann's The Keep on Criterion. And he is, even with Ian McKellen and Scott Glenn, and who else is in that? This is an amazing cast. Morgan Shepherd. Oh, and Jurgen Prochnow. Morgan Shepherd's the best thing in it. Best thing in it. Barely in it, but totally, as he always did, makes such a great impression. Maybe I think we should have picked Morgan Shepherd as Ira Graves.
I kind of like that episode, by the way, for the record.
Yeah, I kind of do too. And Brent's good in it. He's possessed by Dr. Graves, and trying to pass himself off, and it's just this incredible ego that he has. It's a fun episode,
and the title pays homage to the great Patrick McGowan's The Prisoner.
Well, yes, because Tracy Torme, who wrote it, was a huge fan of The Prisoner. So
not the wine, but the show.
Who is number one? Riker. Okay, so that brings us to Darren Dochterman and number 78.
This character is from. She appeared in 2 episodes, I believe. One before this, in a much smaller role. But this was the episode that she was actually allowed to do.
Goodbye, me.
What, Ash?
Oh, I thought you were freezing. I think it was me.
Okay. Thank you.
None of us are freezing now.
Tech officer.
It is in fact, from one of my guilty pleasure episodes, The Game. And it is Ensign Robin Leffler.
Law 1, you can only count on yourself. Law 17, when all else fails, do it yourself.
That's Law 36. You gotta go with what works.
That's Law 46. Life isn't always fair.
Don't forget Law 91. Always watch your back. Robin's laws, all 102 of them.
Law 103?
Yes.
A couple of light years can't keep good friends apart.
Played by the luminous Ashley Judd. And I fell for her in this episode big time because she has that, sprightly girl next door, yet smart alecky attitude. And she was great. And Wesley was a loser. But
am I the only one who walked away from that episode thinking, can we just swap out Wesley for Robin Leffler?
You weren't the only one.
Yeah, okay.
Totally.
Leffler's laws.
That's correct.
She doesn't make much of an impression in Darmok, but she sure does in The Game.
Yeah, exactly. But look, she obviously is related to the Judd, and the other Judd. That's a
Judge Reinhold.
No. That's a Gary Shandling reference from the Larry Sanders Show, where Hank introduced Winona Judd as the Judd.
Oh, I want to get this group of people, there's 4 of us, together on Deck 78, because I want to talk about that Alan Sepinwall 100 Best TV Series of All Time and make some revisions from us.
Okay.
I think that would be a fun episode.
We can definitely do that.
Yeah.
Anyway, So Robin Leffler is teamed up with Wesley in this episode, and they find out the secret to this insidious game that is taking over, like the internet, to all the crew and making them into zombies. I don't actually know what the end game is for this game.
It's the 24th century TikTok.
Yeah. It doesn't really make much sense, but it's a fun little adventure. And she and Wesley figure out how to trick the parents and get out from being attacked by our main crew members. And so it's a lot of fun. And she's great. I really enjoy her portrayal.
She just, I think the reason that we're drawn to her, there were a couple of these supporting characters, like Lucia Naff from Total Recall, who came in and were only in a couple episodes, and yet we remember them so fondly.
Yeah,
because they wrote them with a personality.
Right.
And a lot of these supporting characters were super flat. They were just exposition delivery machines.
As opposed to the ensign that helps Commander Riker find out where Commander Data is.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Show me. Tell me. but I think whenever they gave them a little spice and a little personality, and
when
clearly,
they were, I don't know, written.
Right.
Yeah.
Sonia Gomez.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was talking about. Lucia Naff was Sonia Gomez, right? And also you see what happens in the hands of a very capable actress, because of course, the Judd went on to a very successful cinematic career.
Absolutely.
And so even in this small role, she really shines.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that brings us back to Ashley Edward Miller, number 77, as we come close to ending the second part of our 9,000 part episode.
My goodness.
But right now we wait on number 77. Ashley Edward Miller, tell us who it is.
Coming in at number 77 is a character who I think was best described as the captain was strong. Captain Clark Terrell.
Sir, it is difficult. I try to obey, but kill him. Kill him, Terrell, now!
Captain Shaka when the walls fell.
Captain Shaka when the walls fell, played by Paul Winfield, captain of the USS Reliant, before he was unceremoniously replaced by Khan Noonien Singh. Now, there are a lot of reasons why one could perhaps be critical of the service record of Captain Clark Terrell. I mean, after all, he did get his ship taken over. He beamed down to a planet with just Chekhov, which one should never do.
Especially if you've seen any of the TOS episodes.
Yeah, exactly.
I try to obey, but it is
difficult. I mean, he had a rough week, man. Maybe we weren't catching him at his best. You know what I'm saying? But here's the thing that makes Captain Terrell a badass. I mean, he got the thing in his ear. That had to hurt. That sucked. He lost his ship. He lost his crew. All these things that would get him court-martialed. Very, very bad.
He left him on the fourth planet.
He did. But when push came to shove, he made the ultimate sacrifice. And I say this seriously. He made the ultimate sacrifice to save everyone.
Yep.
He put a phaser to himself and pulled the trigger.
Because the captain was strong.
Because the captain was strong. Yeah. So all respect to Captain Terrell. And there is no dishonor in getting bested by the superior intellect.
But you're right. In almost every other scene, it's kind of interesting to see how he reacts as captain. It seems like he's never been in a captain's chair before.
Yeah, he seems very confused about the whole captain
thing.
Don't
tell me you found something. What?
You know what? I beg to differ. I think one of the things
I love him.
Yeah, we're overselling the point for comedy. But
because I think one of the great things about the original series is that when you met the other captains, they usually were pretty strong.
They were awful.
Or crazy.
No, a lot of them were crazy, but they made him Morgan Woodward as Captain Tracy.
Oh, on the show,
You know, Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
talking
on the
about
show.
the movie Other Captains.
No, but that's right, because the characters on the in the TV show, there were some other great captains. It was William Wyndham, obviously, as Decker. They were all very damaged, but they were powerful, right? Then you get to motion picture movie we all love, but let's admit it, Commander Branch on Epsilon 9 is nothing to write home about. He doesn't really make much of an impression. So it was so nice in Star Trek 2 to suddenly see what at least I perceived as a capable, semi-charismatic captain at the helm, which would always be the case going forward in the Star Trek movies.
No. Well, also, and that was sort of also defined by the relationship he had with Chekhov, because even in their brief scenes, does it have to be completely lifeless? They had a playful, respectful rapport, and it seemed like the Reliant would be a fun ship to be on.
For a while.
Until it all goes horribly wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, we never find out what happened to poor Styles.
Oh, man.
How can we have a red alert in space time?
No, not that Styles.
Oh, my bad.
No, the Styles from TOS, the transporter operator, who's now the
oh shit, you're right. He was on a Reliant.
Yeah.
I know, which was another nice touch.
Exactly.
I never forget a face.
It's a lot better than those awful people
including faces I have
in
never
Star Trek
seen.
3 on the Grissom.
Oh my God. Yeah.
The worst. The absolute worst. No, Tyrell was cool. I would have watched a TV series with Captain Tyrell's
I
Chekhov
totally would have.
gallivanting around the galaxy.
Because it would be a comedy.
Yeah. Every episode, he encounters something he's never seen before. And he has no idea what to do with it.
Jonas Grundy was a captain too.
That's right.
What the hell is that?
He has his hat. He just hits Chekhov in every episode. Chekhov!
And it's funny because originally, obviously, in the early scripts, Sowards and Peoples, it was Sulu was the captain and Chekhov was his first officer.
Yeah.
It's much more interesting to have it be Tyrell.
And Walter never would have gone along with that. I guarantee you.
Yeah, I know. And you can't blame Shatner for that one, right?
Not at all.
Yeah. Okay. Good. We like Captain. Right, Rob? We like Captain Tyrell.
We do.
We really do.
Really? Yeah, okay. Well, there you go. So, Darren, coming in number 76, we got a character who's a little larger than life.
Sometimes God doesn't necessarily need a starship. And this is one of those cases where we actually meet an alien who could probably have been mistaken for a god by the ancient humans. It
Probably.
is Apollo.
I loved you. I would have made a goddess of you. I've shown you my open heart. See what you've done to me. Zeus, Hermes, Hera, Aphrodite, you were right. Athena, you were right. The time has passed. There is no room for gods. Forgive me, my old friends. Take me. Take me.
I wish we hadn't had to do this. So do I. They gave us so much. The Greek civilization, much of our culture and philosophy came from a worship of those beings. The way they began the Golden Age. Would it have hurt us, I wonder, just to have gathered a few laurel leaves?
Was. Okay, that's how it happened. But according to this story,
I am Apollo.
Showtime.
Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, and look, played by the great Michael Forrest, Apollo is so freaking good. He is calm on the outside, but inside rages a horrific storm, and
he just wants to be worshipped.
He just wants to
get laid
a little bit and get laid. Yes,
it's been a while.
He's got great taste in ladies too.
Absolutely.
Leslie Parrish.
He was a big fan of Manchurian Candidate, as we know.
Later married Richard Bach.
That's correct.
The author of Jonathan Livingston Seagull.
Yes. Thank you. This is my spot. No,
sorry.
Thank you.
This is your spot?
Look, the back and forth that we get between Apollo and Captain Kirk make it so much fun to watch. And it just shows you that he's preparing for Star Trek V by learning how to talk to a god. And so he's been around that rodeo before. Apollo is an incredibly moving character, because you realize that he is the last of his kind and he doesn't have anywhere to be now. And it's incredibly sad when he is taken by the elements at the end.
Heartbreaking, isn't it?
It's heartbreaking because he was the one who loved the Earth the most, because he was waiting for them to come back, and luckily he got to see that day, but it wasn't everything he expected. And would it have been so difficult to collect a few laurel leaves?
Yeah, but that gets boring real fast.
Well, how dare you?
Collecting laurel.
Well, you know who would have loved to have lived there? Dr. Severin and his followers.
Well, this is true.
If only they could have found, because I think they all could have reached together.
Yeah, they could have reached. They could have reached and sang songs. Yeah, that would have been great. Yeah, it's funny. We talked about this. That episode I loved as a kid. I always, when I saw that giant hand, I always
was like,
But you have
a new appreciation for it.
But I have a new appreciation for it because it's Michael Forrest, because it was two things I didn't like. It was kind of silly. It was kind of like, now I'm like, oh, they spent so much money on this episode with the effects, and why this one? And then the third thing is it was a Scotty romance. So I hated that. Well, Scotty.
None of the Scotty romances have worked.
Keep him down on the engine room. I don't.
But you know what though? You know what I loved about this? It wasn't really a Scotty romance, because she was totally him at bay.
She wasn't having it. Yeah.
No, yeah. And I love, even as a kid, I'm like, oh, I get it. This is how women act when you love them and you follow them around like little puppy dogs. They have no interest in you, but they're still nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was an important lesson to learn for all you dudes out there.
They could have called that episode The Friend Zone. Yes.
Yeah.
It's really funny.
But even that, even though her new beau was an actual god, that wasn't still enough for her. So, what are you going to do?
She was very fickle.
He just had no game. That was the problem.
And by the way, she fucked him.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
She absolutely did.
Well, I mean, that scene, even though it was cut, is canon because it was written, it was filmed. Yeah. It just didn't make the episode.
No. And I'm like, you go, girl. 23rd century and all.
See, now, has anyone ever followed up on that? Like her giving birth to a god?
But I'm sure whoever listened to this episode is now jotting it down and is calling, whatever Star Trek licensee book thing they're going to write this.
Oh my God! If they were still making fan films,
there must be some comic story that Apollo comes back and there's.
How could they not? Could you?
They did that on Star Trek Continues. They have an episode where Apollo comes back.
Apollo comes back. Yeah.
But they
don't deal with the pregnancy.
But we don't want to see Apollo come back. We want to see her have the baby.
Yeah,
we want to see her.
That's not going to happen.
What if the baby was played by
Leslie Parrish have Lieutenant Palamas have Apollo's baby? That's interesting.
And Leslie Parrish's baby
in the world
could meet Spock's baby from All Our Yesterdays.
Oh my God.
And Zara.
No, not from All
Yesterdays.
From Star Trek 3.
Oh, there's Spock's got but Ann Crispin's Star Trek.
And now we're creating a race of super soldiers.
There you go.
Has a
now
whole
we've got a eugenics program.
He got more legitimate kids than Kirk.
Every time he did Ponfar, there was a kid.
Yeah. So
who knows? Maybe Leela Kalani got knocked up in this side of paradise.
Who knows? Maybe
she totally did.
She can't be again. That's the beauty of it.
Okay, well, before we get ourselves canceled, let's move on to number 75. And Robert Meyer Burnett, if you take us home at the end of part 2, number 75, who will it be?
Well, this was a very interesting character that was introduced into Star Trek in the latter half of the third season of Next Generation. And interestingly enough, there's only one credited writer on this episode, and that is Sally Caves, which is actually the pen name of Sarah Higley, who is a science fiction writer and a professor of English at the University of Rochester. How she got to write this episode, don't know. Now I want to find out because I don't know. But I'm, of course, talking about somebody who's now looked upon as a depiction of what is the proper term? But an individual that's maybe on the spectrum.
On the spectrum a little bit.
Many different things.
Basically, really, an audience surrogate.
Well, yeah, what Sally Caves, what this Higley said is that this character is a Star Trek fan.
Yeah.
She was writing the depiction of a Star Trek fan as a character. And that's, of course, Reginald Barclay.
I don't know. There's a part of this that's kind of therapeutic. Maybe you ought to talk to Counselor Troy about it.
When I'm in there, I'm just more comfortable. You don't know what a struggle this has been for me, Commander.
Well, I'd like to help if I can.
Being afraid all of the time of forgetting somebody's name, not knowing what to do with your hands. I mean, I am the guy who writes down things to remember to say when there's a party. And then when he finally gets there, he winds up alone in the corner, trying to look comfortable, examining a potted plant.
You're just shy, Barclay.
Just shy. Sounds like nothing serious, doesn't it? You can't know.
Played by the great Dwight Schultz. And what's interesting about, I mean, yeah, you want to love this character, but now, especially now in this day and age, there's a big creep factor.
I love it when a fan comes together.
Oh man.
Oh my God.
I mean, he's recreating our main crew on the holodeck. This episode's called Hollow Pursuits. And there's an underlying, I think this episode has a new meaning today than it did when it first came out. Because when it first came out, he was kind of this troubled guy. He was a brilliant guy. He had he was known for his brilliance as an engineer.
He was leading a life of quiet desperation.
Yes, he was. And he was already on the Enterprise. He wasn't a new character. That he already worked for Geordi in engineering. We just had never met him before. And he was shown as being very capable, but he had this rich fantasy life where he spent more time with his characters, these unreal characters or based on real people, but they were all his made up fantasies.
Right.
And it was, I never really liked this episode very much when I first saw it. But what's interesting about this character is he became a semi-regular, and he was with us all the way up to the end of Voyager, to Voyager Endgame. And he became, he was one of the people that was able to allow Voyager to contact Earth.
He's in First Contact.
He's in First Contact. And he became sort of this great secondary character that became sort of lovable.
Yeah.
And I liked him because maybe at first he was supposed to be a Star Trek fan, but then he was also somebody that overcame his difficulties, and he was able to continue on and learn to work with people, and became sort of this, especially the relationship he had with Deanna Troi was really great. And it showed Star Trek's depiction of a character, a person you might not like when you first meet them. And then it showed how when you get to know somebody and you get to understand their gifts, that they can actually be an asset. I mean, that's what this episode was really all about. And I even loved how there's a great scene where Riker, they think he's kind of a lost cause. And it's Picard who says something to the effect of, well, then make him a good cause. It's up to you. It's up to us to make sure that he does his job and he fits in with the crew.
It's up to us to do something with Lieutenant Broccoli.
Yeah, yes. But I like that. I mean, he's a character that could have been annoying in any other TV show, but in a Star Trek series, they made him somebody who was vital and necessary. Yeah. And I really like that.
Well, they probably would have killed him off in modern shows.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And yes, he would have begged for his life from a young female commander, and she would have said, Shut up. I don't want to hear.
It's funny. I gotta disagree with you because I kind of liked Hollow Pursuits. I thought it was a really interesting examination of the dangers of virtual reality when virtual reality was kind of in its infancy.
Oh, I agree. I just meant I didn't like it at the time when it first started.
And I also feel like that whole goddess of empathy stuff is really funny, where he creates Troy on the holodeck, which is exactly probably what would happen.
Well, now we live in a world where it does.
Yeah. And it can. It's like he idolizes her. It tells you a lot. Barclay himself, notwithstanding. And by the way, I love the fact that this character is like shown capable of actual growth as a human being. Yes. Because of where they start him, right? Because he doesn't start as a perfect Starfleet officer. They don't have to find like his little flaws and then sort of gradually, adjust him until like those little flaws don't mean anything. He starts off very flawed and then becomes very
rare
functional.
on that. You didn't see that on Next Gen.
No,
exactly, and it was terrific. But I also, would like to wax poetic a little bit about Dwight Schultz. He's another actor who I was very privileged to work with on Dota. His capability as an actor is just staggering. The way that he can find colors in a character, in a line, how generous he was, with Laura Pulver, who was on my cast, but how generous he was with other actors. How he just collaborated in those performances like that. This guy is like, Barclay is kind of a goof and Murdoch is crazy in the A-Team. But Dwight Schultz is the real deal.
Yeah.
And there's I think a large part of why Barclay works is because Dwight Schultz, found the dimensionality of this character and brought him out.
It's interesting. Cliff Bole, who actually ended up directing 41 episodes of Star Trek,
Jesus.
Which is so odd because he started with Contagion, but he wasn't a great director. I didn't think.
Most pedestrian director on that show.
Absolutely. And he didn't believe when he was told that Barclay was a representation of Star Trek fans. He didn't believe it. And he said, well, I didn't feel that way. I didn't approach the episode that way. He didn't know any of these things. And it's so funny that he had such a long, because when we were working on the Next Generation Blu-rays, we interviewed him and sat down with him. And it's so funny to me because he seemed like just about the last guy that should have been directing Star Trek. But he was not the most dynamic individual in the world, which I found very surprising.
I think probably the reason he kept getting work was he came in on time, he came in on budget, and he didn't argue with Rick. He just did what he was asked to do. And so they liked him.
He defined journeyman.
He's totally journeyman director. Yeah. And that's exactly what Rick wanted because he didn't want people who were going to fight with him and argue and, have a vision. It was like, there was a very, sort of somebody like Rick. That's why he got hired again and again. On time, on budget.
Yep. So that's Barclay.
That's Barclay. Well, and that's our latest installment of the 101 Star Trek's Greatest Characters. We'll be back with part 3, where we'll resume with number 74 next time on the countdown. But as always, this has been a delight. And if you want to weigh in with your thoughts, of course, you can. If you're still on Twitter, you can follow us at Inglorious Trek, or you can come to us on Instagram and Inglorious Treksperts, or Facebook. As for Mastodon, I don't know what that is, so don't expect to find us there. It's some kind of prehistoric beast, as far as I know. But I guess
if you want to subscribe and get a little deeper and join us on Deck 78. All you got to do.
And who doesn't want to get deeper?
Who doesn't want to go deeper?
I think everyone does, if you know what I mean. What?
Yeah.
Join us at TrekspertsPlus.com, and it's easy to subscribe and be a Dexpert.
That's right. Who knows what could happen on Deck 78?
And if you haven't gotten enough of Rob's musings on science fiction and Star Trek here on the Treksperts, you can follow him every day at the Burnettwork. So go check him out on YouTube at the Burnettwork, and you too can become a connoisseur of imagination with Mr. Burnett as he takes you boldly and shares his deep insights that you haven't even considered.
I don't know about that, but yeah.
In his in his, it looks exactly the same as your old lair.
Kind of does, doesn't it?
It does.
It's actually quite different. But,
Do you think
really?
Superman would change how his Fortress of Solitude looks if he moved?
Well,
a
yeah,
couple
kind of. In
miles?
Superman 4, it's like a lot less, impressive because of the budget. So I do.
Yeah. The old crystal budget was a little lower.
Yeah, they couldn't afford all those crystals. So
if you beam down, you won't find one blessed crystal.
Have this filter mask. Okay. And that'll wrap it up because we got to start recording the next episode imminently. So we want to thank you once again for joining us here at the Treksperts. We're hoping you're having a great holiday season, and we look forward to seeing you next time. So on behalf of Robert Burnett, Ashley Edward Miller, Darren Doctorman, and myself, Mark A. Altman, keep on trekking, ingloriously, of course.
We can build a snowman and pretend that he's a circus clown. We'll have lots of fun with Mr. Snowman until the other kids knock him down. When it snows, ain't it thrilling? Though your nose gets a chilling, we'll frolic and play the Eskimo way, walking in a winter wonderland. To face unafraid the plans that we've made, walking in a winter wonderland.